motorsport. Put that thing in sports. Shot it bad, pop up like a court. You a dork, never been a sport. Pull up.
Hello guys, welcome back to my Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone is well and good. Today I've got a kind of like video, kind of like movie overview slash review slash what I've kind of learnt from the movie The Eternals, which is a Marvel film. Just sort of like some things that I've picked up and think like apply to like real life in terms of like lessons in a way. I've seen people do this on like some Netflix series and just kind of like lessons on life that they've learned from that particular show or movie, and I thought like this movie in particular, I was like, okay, I'm definitely seeing some lessons here. Spoke about my sister and I was like, cool, let me make a quick video. So if you haven't watched The Eternals yet, I'd suggest maybe to watch it first before I go into this video so I don't give anything away. And yeah, make sure you like, comment and subscribe. And assuming that if you're watching to this part you have watched the film, kind of a little bit of an overview of like kind of what's going on. It's essentially, so there's these Eternals who are the main characters, and they were made by Celestials to basically protect planets from deviants and these kind of like creatures, but they do not get involved in human conflict. So if there's any type of wars and stuff, they don't get involved. They only fight the deviants. That's like kind of their purpose slash what they do. So that the end goal basically is for them to create a bigger human population, and basically with more people then use the energy from the planet to create another celestial, which is what they don't know. They just think they're helping the planets, but this like kind of like god celestial, as well as Ajax, who like kind of runs the Eternals, are aware that that's what they're doing, and then they basically sacrifice that kind of like planet, so like Earth, to create another celestial once the population is big enough, and then the memory's wiped and they do it again. So it goes on and on, it's constant cycle. So they kind of build the population, the planet is then sacrificed, and then with the energy from the planet sacrificed, another celestial is born. So that's what happens each time, but they don't know this until towards the end. So yeah, that's kind of like the main kind of like gist of it. I'm assuming you've already watched it. Kind of like the first lesson I picked up from the film is, well, my sister actually mentioned this and I thought that was like a really good like idea of how kind of like it was made. So it's kind of like the Eternals acting as, I guess, kind of like mini gods in this world, and it's kind of like they're purposely not stepping in. Obviously if you're Christian you might kind of like agree more with this, where it's kind of like God, I guess, could stop lots of things, but it's almost like they don't, and this kind of applies to why the Eternals were told by Arishem not to step in. It's kind of like we wouldn't develop if there was no conflict, if there was no difficulty, if there was nothing to kind of like, no type of difficulty, and every time there was an issue or war someone stepped in and then it was solved, we wouldn't actually develop, we wouldn't grow. And I think this happens with humans on everyday life, in terms of when you think of people who've had, I guess, more like kind of trauma or more of kind of like a difficult past to get to where they are. When you think of artists, celebrities that have like started from the bottom, I feel like they have grown more than people that were just handed to them, and they've had that kind of like development within themselves and opportunity to grow without it just being directly handed to them. So I guess that's kind of like a viewpoint of like how the Eternals work, and it's kind of like relates to like real life in a way. Like we need kind of like difficult times in order to grow sometimes. Like branching off that point, it's not really shown too much in the movie, but it is a thing of like everything has a knock-on effect. So yeah, in terms of that knock-on effect, it's just interesting how like, because if you think if the Celestials decided to, if the Eternals decided to kind of like get involved in some things and not others, it wouldn't work. And you see that through Droog, where like he's controlling people. He has a thing where like in his eyes he can control people. Like you don't really see the knock-on effect as much, but like he starts doing that even though he shouldn't tamper with kind of like human conflict. Another Marvel movie that actually does this is, it's not out yet, but it's the new Spider-Man film. In the trailer, if you guys have watched it, and it shows that he asks for somebody that knows that he's Spider-Man, like go back in time, and then so everyone find out he's Spider-Man, go back in time and basically stop that from happening. And then after, you kind of just see so much stuff happening because of that. So it just shows how there's a kind of like a knock-on effect of everything. It's kind of like a ripple effect. I think that's what's called, ripple effect. And to relate that to everyday life, I feel like this is when you really think like everything happens for a reason. This is how I view it anyway. If you think there's so many situations, like you'll see interviews and people were like, you know, like I was meant to get on this plane, so annoyed I missed the plane because something happened. Watched the news and that plane crashed and everyone died on it. Everything happens for a reason, and I think we just need to think of the positive things. Don't think, oh, I missed it. Everything happens for a reason. You don't know. If you got on that train that you missed, you don't know what could have happened. You could have saw someone that for some reason went crazy and hit you in the head and you had concussion. Like, you just don't know. So I think it's so important to kind of like think, oh, you know, it wasn't great that happened, but it's fine. Like, that's how it's meant to happen. And if you're always thinking of, you know, like, if I should, oh, I could have done this, would have done that, coulda, shoulda, woulda, but it's like the past is gone. Like, let's think about the future and like think about, you know, we're still alive. Do you know what I mean? On the positive side, like, everything does have a knock-on effect, whether you know it or not. Like, do you know what I mean? So that's kind of like another thing that I kind of like felt I saw from that third lesson I've kind of seen from the film The Eternals is that you never really know anybody. Icarus killing Ajax, that was just a madness for me. Like, it was just a little bit crazy. Like, it was a bit mad still, like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think, so you never really know anybody. Icarus killing Ajax, that was a madness. And then we went back and then he pretended like, oh my god, he was so upset that Ajax died, when really he put her body back in her house for the others to find. Like, that's mad. I think one lesson in life is you never really know anybody. Like, obviously trust people, but you know, like, keep your guard up, and if your gut's telling you something, follow your gut, because usually your gut is right. And based off that kind of like Icarus, you know, believing that it was still the right thing to do, he knew like what the reason that they were kind of like fighting the deviants, and he knew that planet Earth was going to be basically sacrificed, but he thought it was the right thing to do anyway, even though he knew there was a massive sacrifice. And I think this goes on to my next point, which is everyone has different opinions. I don't necessarily think that Icarus was like a bad person or wrong, because it's kind of like, I'm trying to see it from his side in a way. Like, the sacrifice, it's kind of like when you think of like at what cost, and when they do kind of like those psychology kind of like test where they're like, oh, if you pull the train one way, like 2 people die. If you pull the train the other way, it's a family or a baby or something like that. And it's kind of like people see things differently, and I think we should be more open to other people's opinions. Like, I don't necessarily think he was wrong for doing that, because there was kind of like a good reason for them to kind of like sacrifice planet Earth, so more celestials are built, so there's more kind of planets, and I think that, yes, to build more planets. So like, I think it's just about, you know, being okay. Like, people think differently, and I think that's okay, and no one's necessarily wrong. And I think even though when you think they had the same kind of like, they were all made by Arasham, they were all created by Arasham, all lived pretty similar lives, but for him, he just didn't see it the way that others did, and the others saw it in a different way. And like, I think that's life. People see things in a different way, and people aren't necessarily wrong for seeing things in a different way, especially when you think all of us have had completely different upbringings and childhoods, etc, etc. Like, people aren't necessarily wrong, and I think we should be more open to other opinions, whether we agree or not. Just be like, okay, cool, I see your side, kind of thing. So I think that's kind of like another kind of lesson from the movie. Having different opinions, people also change. Ajax was kind of following obviously was like doing that for years and years, and she obviously knew the reason why they were doing it, and she knew that it was because they were sacrificing, they weren't actually just saving planet Earth. So planet Earth was gonna go, yeah, but she believed in it for thousands of years, maybe millions, I can't remember, and she changed. Her mind changed, and I think that is okay in this life. Sometimes you change your mind. Something that you might have said 2 years ago, you might not necessarily agree with now, and that is fine. People grow and people change. And then when she was speaking to Icarus, and she was like, look, like, I've met people, and like, they've changed me, like, humans have changed me, and I think it's fine. Like, people can change, and like, I feel like experiences as well, and kind of like speaking to different people, hearing different perspectives, experiencing different things, like, can really change you. And I think in life, like, experiences change people. I think people might focus, for example, on a lot of material things, and they might have like a near-death experience, and their sort of perception on life changes, and that's completely fine. Like, we can change and we can grow. Whether we've been set in our ways for, my girl's been set in her ways for thousands of years, and she still changed. Whether you're 70, whether you're 17, you can change, and that's completely fine. Like, you can grow and develop, and that's what people do. People change. So that's another lesson. The next lesson that I saw is there is power in knowing who you are. There is power in knowing who you are, and this was represented by the character Athena, and played by Angelina Jolie. Obviously Gilgamesh was kind of like taking care of her and always reminding her who she was, because obviously when she didn't, her memory was basically at capacity, and it was bugging out. She was bugging out because her memory was at capacity because she's been alive for so many years. And then obviously she went a bit crazy when she, like, her memory kind of went and her eyes went funny. And then Gilgamesh had to keep reminding her who she was. And I believe that when you know who you are, you have power in that. There is so much power with that. And when Gilgamesh died and she was kind of promised, like, you know, like, I remember who I am, and then I think for the end of the movie she did remember who she was, and she got her power back. And I feel like that's relevant to the real life world in terms of when you are comfortable and strong in who you are, there is so much power within that. People can really see who you are. People are like, okay, this person's sure of themselves, okay. And when you know who you are, people also know who you are. Like, you have to set the standard yourself. You can't wait for anyone to tell you who you are or what you deserve or, you know, what you're worth. When you know what you're worth, there is a lot of power with that, and people can see that you're confident in that. And that also relates to people who have come out of relationships where they've kind of like lost themselves and that kind of thing. And then when you see when people come out of relationships and then they find themselves again and know who they are, there is so much power in that. And I believe that Athena basically represented that really, really well. And I think that us all as individuals should kind of aspire and work on knowing who we are, because there is so much power in that. So that's another lesson. Like, based on that, I feel like sometimes to find out who you are again, it's kind of a thing of like trauma or something has to happen or change. And I think for her it was when Gilgamesh died, she basically patted up and she was like, right, I don't have anyone to help me, and for my man, he's basically been backing me. I need to remember who I am. Like, I'm that bad bee, I'm the best. Like, and she was very powerful. Like, she killed the main deviant, which was really, really, I think he was like the most powerful deviant that took Ajax's power. But she killed that, and like, I don't think any of the others could actually kill that one, so she had so much power in that. So know your worth. To finish this, I feel like this is a bit of a weird one, but kind of like knowing your purpose, or knowing, I guess you could relate this to like a working life, knowing who you're working for. Essentially, if you start a new company, you have to know what the company's purpose is. This goes to, obviously this is kind of relevant as to, they were all basically working for the Celestial. They were all basically working for Arishem, and they didn't know what they were working towards. Like, they didn't know like that their kind of like main goal was. They kind of just thought, yeah, kill the deviants, save Earth. Whereas they didn't know that actually that's not what you're doing. You guys are going to be sacrificed. And I think a massive hint for that actually was at the beginning when Ajax was talking to Arishem. Arishem was like, don't get attached. He was like, don't fall in love with this planet, or don't fall in love. And that kind of was a massive hint. And I think in life we need to be a bit more vigilant in terms of like, if you hear something and you're kind of like, again, back to that gut feeling. If you have that gut feeling, check it out, make sure, do research, find out, like, do you know what I mean? Like, my gut's not sitting right, but like, I think that goes to show, like, in terms of if any situation that, you know, you're doing something and you're kind of like, I'm not really sure like the purpose of this, or like whether I should be doing it or should be, go with your gut feeling and don't hold off. Find out why you're doing it, whether it's work, whether it's someone said do this, and someone said, oh, give your bank details to me, and you're kind of like and then you give it to them, they said you're gonna get money, but you don't know. Follow your gut feeling, because your gut's usually right. And kind of like, I think with this, obviously the Eternals were different because they actually didn't know, their memory was wiped, but yeah, definitely follow your gut feeling. And I actually feel like Droog was a very good example of someone who just followed their gut feeling and was the first character to do this. There was kind of like the argument with Ajax and Athena and all of the Eternals basically about wiping Athena's memory when she started getting like ill, and then he was just like, he was basically like, fuck this. He was like, we're literally watching people suffer, as in like all the humans are fighting each other, and then he started controlling them. That's when he kind of like went and did his own thing. And I feel like that's a very good example of how he just thought, no, let me actually think for myself for once and go with my gut, and that's what he thought was right. And I think people should do that more in a way. So yeah, that is the end of my video. I hope you kind of liked my thoughts and my 2 pence. I'm an Avengers fan, but I'm not one of those people that knows every single Avengers movie and has watched it. But that's just kind of like what I picked up from the movie. I thought the movie was really, really good. Obviously you got to wait till the end credits, but I don't know, I feel like there might be another one. And obviously Icarus, I don't know, he flew to the sun, and I'm like, did he actually kill himself, or did he just fly? Was there like a base that they have in the sun? Like, this is what me and my friend were thinking, like, we don't actually know. So yeah, hopefully there's another one, because it'll be very interesting. And I've also kind of read up, and people kind of like, oh, well, how come like they didn't stop Thanos, and then like articles were kind of saying because Arishem told them not to. So basically Arishem tells them like what to get involved in and what not to. So I feel like that's kind of why like it hasn't like so yeah, I hope you like my video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.